For many years, the Memphis Mafia concealed Elvis's identity. This inner circle included David Stanley. He was more than just the stepbrother of Elvis. He served as his facilitator, helper, and protector. Stanley, who is 73, asserts that Elvis intentionally used the medicines that caused his death. According to him, Elvis had a thing for girls as young as 15. The world turned its head away. It was not seen by fans. Even more alarming, though, is what else he disclosed. Early on January 8, 1935, Elvis Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, in a small two-room home. He wasn't alone, though. Jesse, his twin brother, was born 35 minutes before him. Jesse, however, failed to show up. He was born still. The Presley family was forever troubled by that incident. Gladys, Elvis's mother, never recovered. She treated Elvis like he was living for two, giving him all of her love, fears, and hopes. Jesse's tomb was left unmarked since they were unable to pay for a headstone. When Jesse was by himself, Elvis would frequently converse with him. He felt he possessed the vitality of two individuals, and that Jesse gave him power. Elvis had a really terrible upbringing. Although the family's small home had power, they were unable to pay for its use. They dragged water from a well close by. Cheap cornmeal was used to make meals. Vernon, Elvis's father, was arrested and imprisoned for 8 months when he was 3 years old for forging a $4 check. Gladys had to move in with family after having to sell their home. By the time Elvis reached 13, they had lived in at least 6 different houses. He was made fun of for bringing biscuits slathered in gravy to school and for dressing in homemade clothes. They survived on government handouts and neighborhood assistance. But there was melody throughout that difficult existence. In church, Elvis discovered it. He experienced a strong emotion at the age of 9 during the first gathering of God in East Tupelo. Loud, happy, and emotional music was warmly received in the chapel. Frank Smith, a pastor, saw Elvis observing and gave him some guitar lessons. Elvis had a how-to book already. He had that even though he couldn't afford much. He was a huge fan of gospel singing. It brought him tranquility. Throughout his life, he continued to sing gospel, even backstage after performances. In the 1930s, Mississippi was collapsing. Insects destroyed the cotton fields. Whole communities had been submerged by the 1927 flood. Everyone was crushed by the Great Depression. But something unique was produced by that mess. Despite segregation, poor white and black families found up living near to one another. In the past, Elvis Presley's family resided in a predominantly black area. Whenever he could, he listened to blues and black gospel music. At night, he listened to WDIA radio, where B.B. King performed the unprocessed music that Elvis would eventually incorporate into his own style. Near that music, the majority of white children were prohibited. No one stopped Elvis. The Presleys came to Memphis in 1948 after packing up everything they owned. Jobs, Vernon had been told. Elvis felt as though he had moved to a different planet. There were 1,600 students at his new school. It was too much. After his first day, he ran home. However, all changed when they were accepted into the public housing complex known as Lauderdale Courts a year later. Beale Street was nearby, where the blues were prevalent. Elvis began attending Ellis Auditorium gospel concerts. He was surrounded by music every single day, whether it was from the church, the streets, or the radio. Elvis's first guitar was purchased by Gladys on his 11th birthday back in Tupelo. She turned down his requests for a firearm and possibly a bike. She spent $7.90 for a guitar for him. Everything altered as a result. He learned to play on his own. He was unable to read music. He simply listened and picked up knowledge by ear. He had a boisterous, energetic, and physical style. Strings were constantly breaking. He created a crazy sound by fusing country, blues, and gospel. Elvis didn't look like other youngsters at Humes High School. He had his hair done like a movie star and was dressed in formal pants. He was considered odd by others. He was reserved and silent. In April 1953, the talent show followed. The crowd went wild when he took the stage and began to perform, but no one had high expectations. He performed 2 songs. He was forced to perform an encore. The timid child became a school star overnight. Following graduating, Elvis held a variety of professions. He worked as a theater usher. After a confrontation with another man, he lost his job. A female handing him free chocolates caused some trouble. He constructed furniture, worked in a tool business, and even assisted a rabbi in turning on lights on the Sabbath. In 1954, he got his most significant job. He worked for Crown Electric as a delivery truck driver. He scratched his favorite stations into the dashboard because he was unable to read the radio dial. But he continued to practice music wherever he worked. He listened to the blues while strolling down Beale Street at night. He got to know B.B. King. In clubs, he observed musicians. Seeing a white child in those settings was uncommon. Elvis didn't care, though. They had been singing that way for years, he subsequently added. I simply made it up. He meant it. He added his own energy to what he heard in those juke joints. As a small birthday present to his mother, Elvis entered Sun Records in 1953 and paid to record 2 songs. Nothing took place. Months later, he returned and recorded 2 more tracks. The studio's owner, Sam Phillips, scribbled his name down but said little else. A bizarre incident occurred in a modest Memphis studio on July 5, 1954. At the age of 19, Elvis Presley began tinkering with an old blues tune. Don't worry, mother, there was no plan. It lacked polish. However, everything fell into place when bassist Bill Black and guitarist Scotty Moore joined in. It was a crazy sound. It wasn't rural, the music wasn't blues. It was neither and both. After hearing it, Sun Studios manager Sam Phillips instructed them to try again. He hit the record this time. The music they created that evening will eventually be referred to as rockabilly, and everything was altered. The song was played on the radio on July 19th, just 2 weeks later. It was played once by Memphis DJ Dewey Phillips, but then again, and once more. He reportedly played it 14 times that evening. The phones continued to ring. People were curious about the identity of this voice. Was he Caucasian or white? Elvis was asked by Dewey which high school he attended. Hume's High, said Elvis. Listeners knew he was Caucasian from that one response. However, his rhythm and vocals were directly inspired by black music, and it was mind-blowing for everyone. There were more shows after that, more sounds. People were hearing and seeing things that they couldn't believe. The next important step followed. They brought in Louisiana Hayride drummer DJ Fontana. Elvis's band was complete with him. They performed tirelessly, often 3 gigs a day, and went by the name Blue Moon Boys. Critics sneered while fans screamed. Even if other towns didn't want them, they went ahead anyhow. Bill's bass slammed, DJ's drums punched, Scotty's guitar danced, and Elvis, he moved in a unique way. A man named Colonel Parker was observing from behind the scenes. Although he wasn't a true colonel, he was skilled at making quick sales pitches. He began managing Elvis by August 1955. It's near, but not quite. It was finished by March 1956. Parker was in complete charge and wasted no time. He struck agreements, collected 25% of Elvis's money, then 50%. By selling buttons that read, I love Elvis and I hate Elvis, he even profited from those who detested the singer. Parker's product concept generated $22 million in just 1 year. RCA Victor wanted Elvis that year. His contract owner, Sam Phillips, requested $35,000 from him. That was unprecedented. Yes, RCA said. In addition to $35,000, they also paid $5,000 in back royalties. The agreement was finalized on November 24, 1955. Elvis was now a performer for RCA. Even though he was only 20, things were going to get a lot bigger. On January 10, 1956, 2 months later, Elvis entered Nashville's RCA Studio B. 2 days had passed since his 21st birthday. Heartbreak Hotel, a song he recorded, was inspired by an actual suicide note that read, I walk a lonely street. The lyrics were gloomy. It was an odd sound. To create a spooky atmosphere, echoes echoed down a hallway, but it was successful. The song peaked at number 68 on the Billboard charts on March 3. It peaked at number 1 by May 5. For 7 weeks it remained there. It was the best-selling single of 1956 by the end of the year. However, not everyone thought it was great. Elvis performed Hound Dog on the Milton Berle Show on June 5, 1956. His hips shifted. His legs trembled. America went insane. He was assaulted by newspapers. Parents were incensed. He was dubbed Elvis the Pelvis by preachers. He was either forbidden by TV stations or they insisted that cameras only record him from the waist up. However, children adored it. Teenagers purchased more of his records the louder the grown-ups screamed. Even Ed Sullivan, who had criticized Elvis for being too unsuitable for family television, had to concede. Elvis made an appearance on Sullivan's broadcast on September 9, 1956. There were 60 million viewers. His entire body was captured on camera, although not for very long. He was only videotaped from the waist up by the time of his third appearance in January 1957. However, the harm had already been done. Now he was everywhere. He was also becoming wealthy, extremely wealthy. Elvis never downplayed the origins of his music in interviews. He openly discussed black singers. "They've been singing this way for years," he claimed. "I simply accelerated it." "Arthur Big Lad, up," he said. "That's all right's original singer." He dialed the true monarch, Fats Domino. He meant it too. Elvis was even referred to by Little Richard as an integrator, someone who introduced black music to white listeners. RCA was unable to meet the demand. They sold 10 million Elvis singles in a single year. The Heartbreak Hotel achieved a double platinum rating. 3 million teddy bears were sold. 1.65 million was sold by a stubborn woman. Sold 2.68 million, much down. The hits continued even after Elvis joined the army in 1958. To maintain his name on the charts, RCA had kept unreleased recordings. It was successful. When he was still in uniform, A Big Hunk of Love became the #1 song. Elvis Presley was already the biggest performer in America on March 24, 1958, when he was recruited into the U.S. Army. He sold out performances, had millions of admirers, and had consecutive hits. Then everything abruptly stopped. There were others who believed his career was over. A couple of years out of the limelight. Any star's momentum could be destroyed by that. Elvis, however, made an unexpected decision. He refused to give troops preferential treatment rather than choosing an easy job amusing them. He desired to serve as an ordinary soldier. Like everyone else, he joined the 3rd Armored Division and went to work. Parents, educators, and detractors all saw him differently after that one action. They referred to him as earnest, patriotic, and polite. They weren't upset about his trembling hip for once. They took pride in him. However, something sinister infiltrated while his image was being cleaned up. Elvis was exposed to amphetamines while serving in Germany. They helped soldiers stay awake during long night shifts. Elvis enjoyed the feelings they gave him. Vivacious, astute, and concentrated. The barbiturates to put him to sleep followed. He lived the rest of his life with that cycle, uppers to wake up, downers to fall asleep. He was grieving at the same moment. He was devastated by the death of his mother, Gladys, who passed away shortly before he departed for Germany. He used drugs to help him deal with the pain. Then a new chapter began. He met Priscilla Beaulieu, a 14-year-old girl in Germany. Later, she would marry him. That bond began while he was serving and continued after he returned home. He had a more polished appearance as a prospective bride at the time of his release on March 5, 1960, and a fresh addiction he was unable to overcome. He would die from that addiction 17 years later. 14 medications were discovered in his system at the time of his death. 10 of them had dangerously high levels. Back home, Hollywood called once more. Elvis immediately entered the film industry. They appeared promising at first. However, everything became predictable by 1962. In practically every movie, he portrayed the same type of guy, a charming musician surrounded by attractive women, at race cars or at beach parties. He produced 21 pictures between 1960 and 1968, sometimes as many as 4 a year. They each had 10 to 12 songs. They were mostly forgettable. Although the formula was successful at the box office, it broke his heart. He made an effort to speak. In the country, Wild and Flaming Star were more somber, more acting, fewer tunes. However, their earnings were modest. He was immediately pulled back into the formula by Colonel Parker. And things just got worse. Even Elvis rolled his eyes at films like Spin Out, Clambake, and Haram Scarum. He started crying after filming Easy Come Easy Go. "It has come to this," he informed his friends. "I'm a singing
bellboy, for crying out loud." He was always playing the same character, albeit in a different uniform. Sometimes an army veteran, sometimes a racing car driver, sometimes a beach bum, but the screenplays were so awful according to one critic. But the money kept coming in. From 1956 to 1969, his films brought in almost $150 Today that is more than $1.4 billion. The majority of movies only cost $2.5 million to produce, yet their box office receipts were double or even treble that amount. $4.2 million was earned by Blue Hawaii. $4.7 million was earned by Viva Las Vegas. Profits were produced even by the cheap dumb ones. It only cost $1.8 million, yet it brought in $3 million. Although soundtrack sales declined, the movies continued to generate revenue. Executives no longer even referred to them as movies in Hollywood memos. They were referred to as cash registers. The reviews didn't matter to them. It was important to them that each Elvis movie earned at least $750,000 in outside markets like Germany and Japan, regardless of how awful it was. However, one movie altered everything. While filming Viva Las Vegas in the summer of 1963, Elvis got to know Anne Margaret. She was more than a mere co-star. She was as charismatic, talented, and full of energy as he was. Immediately, sparks flew.
Their on-screen chemistry translated to real life. Elvis went down hard. A pink Cadillac was given to her by him, wearing gold bracelets that matched, and even began referring to her as his female twin. However, there was an issue. Priscilla was waiting in Germany. She was incensed when she learned of the affair. She gave Elvis a choice between her and Anne when she contacted Graceland. He never really let Anne Margaret go, but he did choose Priscilla. He sent her flower bouquets in the shape of guitars before every Vegas show until the day he passed away. Decades later, she personally attested to that. The formula was completed by 1969. Elvis desired to leave. Change of Habit, his final film, was released on November 10, 1969. It was not the same. He portrayed a doctor assisting residents of a low-income area of New York. His romantic interest, Mary Tyler Moore, plays a nun. The narrative addressed issues such as mental health, poverty, racism, and even church reform. It wasn't flawless. Some scenes haven't held up well over time, such as the one when a child with autism receives rage treatment. However, it was an effort. Elvis desired to once more be taken seriously. The movie had a much more somber tone and a larger budget of $3.2 million. The criticism was harsh. It was described as unsophisticated but well-intentioned. Not even closure was provided by the conclusion. It's possible that the nun left her vows for Elvis, or perhaps not. Nobody was aware. However, there was a noticeable change. His last movie was Change of Habit, and looking back, it was the only one that actually made an effort to express something genuine. On May 1, 1967, Elvis and Priscilla were married, in the city of Las Vegas. Only 8 minutes were spent on the ceremony. By 9 a.m. it was over. Colonel Tom Parker organized it to get media attention, although only 14 people were invited. Following the vows, they hosted a news conference and served about 100 guests a $10,000 champagne breakfast. Red West and other close pals of Elvis were not invited. Behind the scenes, it created a great deal of strain. Elvis and Priscilla took a quick honeymoon flight to Palm Springs immediately following the celebration. After that, they stayed at a ranch close to the Mississippi border for 3 peaceful weeks. Later, Elvis claimed to have enjoyed playing house there. Although it was an uncommon instance of serenity, their private lives were anything but. Priscilla disclosed the extent of Elvis's power over her in her 1985 memoir, Elvis and Me. He informed a pal when she was still a teenager that she was young enough to train in whatever way he desired. He selected her clothing. He gave her hair and cosmetics instructions. She looked like a doll he dressed up, according to one of his entourage members. Additionally, Elvis administered her medications without always identifying them. She wrote of taking sleeping pills that rendered her unconscious for 2 days. When she was exhausted at school, he also gave her amphetamines. She was afraid when they even tried LSD together. He always turned the tables on her when she questioned him about other women. He would say he would return her to Memphis. He would then reconsider, after she started crying. It was a battle of the emotions. Lisa Marie Presley was born to Priscilla on February 1, 1968. Nearly to the day, it had been precisely 9 months since the wedding. Elvis was first anxious about being a father. He even requested a trial separation while Priscilla was 7 months pregnant. But he changed after Lisa was born. He gave her the name of his private jet. He made his tours in it all the time. It didn't last, though. In 1972, Priscilla and Elvis parted ways. Lisa Marie was just 4 years old. Although she lived in Los Angeles with her mother, she frequently visited Graceland during breaks from school. On August 16, 1977, the night her father passed away, she was visiting Graceland. She had only just turned 9. She was permanently plagued by that incident. Lisa, along with her grandfather Vernon and great-grandmother Minnie Mae, inherited Elvis's estate upon his passing. She was left as the only heir. Following their passing, for years the marriage had been failing. Priscilla learned of Elvis's infidelity in the most inconvenient way. She claimed to have found letters from ladies thanking Elvis for the intimate invitations during a panel in Orlando in 2025. When she approached Elvis, he denied everything. One letter said, "Charlie Hodge asked me to come up, and I'm so glad you greeted me." For asking, he made her feel bad. She eventually gave up trying. "You didn't have your own life," she said. "You lived his life." She had begun an affair with Mike Stone, her karate instructor, by the early 1970s. She said in a 2017 interview that the marriage was terminated due to infidelity on both sides. "He was unfaithful. I simply didn't want to tell anyone about him." She said, however, that her love for him never faded. She had to find herself, so she went. In October 1973, their divorce was formalized. She initially consented to a meager $100,000 in monthly installments, but her new attorneys insisted on more. She ultimately received $725,000 and continued assistance. Half the proceeds from the sale of their Beverly Hills house,
as well as 5% of Elvis Presley's publishing firms. She continued after that. In the same year, Priscilla launched Biss & Beau, a shop in Los Angeles. Diana Ross, Barbra Streisand, and Cher were among her clients. Priscilla took over as executor of Elvis's estate upon his death in 1977. It was a catastrophe. The upkeep of Graceland alone cost $500,000 annually. Lisa had only $1 million left in her estate. It was a brave move on Priscilla's part. She made Graceland a museum open to the public. On June 7, 1982, it opened. The risk paid off. It just took 4 weeks to pay for itself. The estate expanded into an enterprise worth $100 million under Priscilla's direction. Amidst all of this, Elvis made one of the most significant musical comebacks ever. Singer Presents debuted on NBC on December 3, 1968. The original plan was for it to be a Christmas special, but Steve Binder, the filmmaker, had other ideas. Elvis. He wanted it to seem exciting and unadulterated. Elvis concurred. In June, he taped it, performing stand-up and sit-down performances with fans alone. Elvis in black leather was the main attraction. That appearance went down in mythology. If I Can Dream, the last tune, was composed especially for him. Despite Parker's objections, Elvis persisted. 42% of the TV viewers watched the show when it aired. The season's highest-rated program was that one. Everyone knew that Elvis had returned. Vegas followed. Elvis gave a performance at the brand-new International Hotel in Las Vegas on July 31, 1969. Every seat in the 2,000-person room was occupied. In 4 weeks, he performed 57 gigs, sometimes 2 every night. Hundreds of fans lined up. To see him, some people traveled from Europe via plane. The reviews were excellent. He returned and returned, putting on 636 sold-out performances in 7 years. Priscilla described the first night as magical. According to a buddy, Elvis resembled a tiger on the loose. His new dominion was Vegas. Elvis needed a band for this new age. He requested James Burton, a guitarist, to construct one. That was the beginning of the TCB band. It represented using a lightning bolt to take care of business. Elvis emblazoned that insignia on his jewelry, firearms, and plane. Ronnie Tutt, Larry Mahobarak, John Wilkinson, Jerry Sheff, and James Burton were all members of the band. Later, backing vocalists like the Imperials and Sweet Inspirations joined. For his inner circle, Elvis even had customized TCB necklaces created. His performances in Vegas became into extravagance. He was dressed in diamond jumpsuits. He had a martial artist's gait. In between shows, he distributed scarves. Elvis was at his best, and Elvis continued to preach gospel despite everything. In 1967, his song How Great Thou Art earned him his first Grammy. It featured both lively spirituals and languid hymns. Then, in 1972, he won another Grammy for his song He Touched Me. Alongside several well-known gospel singers, he recorded it with the Imperials. In 1992 and 1999, the album achieved gold and platinum status. In November 1976, Elvis got to know Ginger Alden. She was only 20. He was 41. He proposed in 2 months with a huge diamond ring that cost about $70,000. It was supposed to be a dream. However, it wasn't. A loud bang woke Ginger awake one night. Standing at the foot of the bed, holding a .557 Magnum, was Elvis. Above her head, a hole
appeared in the wall. She didn't bring him yogurt, he claimed, so he fired her. Despite her shock, Ginger remained. It was not the only occasion. A running toilet once infuriated Elvis. He used what Ginger described as a machine gun to shoot it to pieces. He slapped her following a quarrel about how much juice he drank while they were in Hawaii. "No one ever leaves me when I'm speaking," he assured her. He had her under control from the start. He answered, "I'll decide," in response to her request to ride in his Ferrari. He then presented her with an Elvis in diamonds gold bracelet. When she was hesitant to end her relationship with another guy, Elvis tossed a bottle of Gatorade against the wall, telling her, "Now everyone will know you belong to me." She was disliked by his pals. They believed she didn't give a damn. According to some, she only stayed because her mother wanted a new car, fur coats, and gifts. She was never trusted by Elvis's close group. Elvis was also collapsing on the inside by that point. For years, he had been taking medicines from his personal physician, Dr. George Nikopoulos. Over 10,000 doses of medications, including sleeping pills, hormones, uppers, downers, and painkillers, were administered to Elvis in just 8 months in 1977. Later, the doctor admitted that he also gave him placebos, but it made no difference. Elvis claimed to have taken attacks. Every day, 3 major drug hits. Each contained potent medications like as Quaaludes, Demerol, Secondal, and Valium. David Stanley, his stepbrother, claimed that Elvis would have his initial attack at around 2 in the morning, eat something, and occasionally nod off in the middle of his bite, even choking on his meal. He had begun that routine a long time ago when he was prescribed medication to keep him awake while serving in the army. Elvis's physique had transformed by this point. Even though he was fat, lethargic, and hardly able to walk, his clothing were still stunning. He was still in shape when he designed his well-known jumpsuits, which were modeled after high collars and karate costumes. However, the garments were altered to accommodate his growing weight. The eye was diverted by the capes and jewels. It was camouflage in show business. Liberation also had an impact on them, who Elvis had met years before in Vegas. Nevertheless, there were brilliant moments. Elvis made history with Aloha from Hawaii in 1973. It was the first concert broadcast via satellite around the globe. 1 billion or more people watched. In actuality, though, it was only shown live in 6 nations. Only 21 countries saw it at all, and the majority of the world received it later. Nevertheless, it was a huge success. The show with the highest ratings of the year was NBC's broadcast from the United States. However, that performance also signaled the start of his last phase. Elvis continued to perform, more than 500 performances. However, his health was rapidly declining. He had his final performance in Indianapolis on June 26, 1977. Elvis was barely keeping the 18,000-strong audience together. He stammered through the lyrics. He asked what day it was, looking perplexed. He sung songs like You Gave Me a Mountain with great sincerity, but he also babbled about Polish folk tunes. He told the audience, "We'll see you again in closing. May God bless you. Goodbye." He passed away less than 2 months later. Elvis was getting ready to go on another tour on August 16, 1977. He went to the restroom at around 7 a.m. to take a nap before his departure. At 2:30 p.m., Ginger discovered him on the restroom floor, face down. He was